It is known that Jesus is a figure who does not need much introduction. After all, everyone knows him. However, what few comment is that its story has aspects that are little talked about, parts that are not that clear. And one of these points is related to a mysterious period of his life, which is not mentioned anywhere in the Bible, the years between his 12 and 30 years of age. This 18-year interval is called the lost years of Christ. There are records that indicate that during this time, Jesus may have traveled to distant places, including reaching Japan. The idea that he was outside the region where he was born raises many questions. Did he go to all these places? Evidence shows that, at the time, despite the difficulties in getting around, people were able to make long journeys using caravans, both by land and by sea. This information is confirmed by the fact that one of Jesus' disciples, Thomas, went to India, which proves that trips of this type were possible at that time. So if others did, could Jesus have traveled too? In addition to the travels, what intrigues many is how a 12-year-old boy who helped in the carpentry would have become a spiritual leader with skills that went beyond the ordinary. The cures, miracles, and teachings he brought are not clearly explained. How did he acquire this knowledge? Where did you study? Who did you learn from? During these 18 years, there are many points without answers. Some more daring theories suggest that Jesus could have had a family or even children. If this were true, who would be his descendants today? It is a question that is often avoided discussing, perhaps because it is controversial. But this question is raised precisely because there is a huge gap in information about these lost years. If there is no clear answer, what could have happened in that time? Other theories suggest that during his journey, Jesus passed through Asia, including places like India and Japan, and even visited parts of Europe. The possibility that he learned from different cultures and traditions throughout this period is something that appears in different historical records and ancient legends. Even though technology at the time was limited, people were able to move around, even if it took a long time. Thus, these 18 years absent from the official narrative of his life continue to raise questions. What did Jesus do during this period? Where have you been? Who did you meet? These are questions that do not have clear answers in the best-known religious texts, but that appear in different accounts and theories throughout history. And these questions continue to intrigue and challenge those who seek to understand his trajectory more deeply. If you are enjoying this content, subscribe to our channel. Your support is essential so that we can continue to bring quality material to you. There is an intriguing folk legend about Jesus Christ in Japan that many have never heard of. In a small town in northern Japan called Shingo, which sits on a remote mountain, this story has been perpetuated for generations. Shingo is a tiny village with about 3,000 inhabitants, and curiously, there are no Christians there. However, this place, apparently forgotten in time, holds one of the most bizarre stories. According to legend, Jesus studied in this city, and it was there that he learned the knowledge he carried throughout his life. But the story goes further. According to this legend, after the crucifixion, Jesus returned to Shingo. And why? The explanation presented is surprising. It was his brother who took his place on the cross. That's right. According to legend, Jesus would not have been crucified. The one who would have faced this fate would have been his brother. But who would this brother be? The name that appears in Japanese legend is Ishukiri, a supposed brother of Jesus, something that is not widely discussed in traditional accounts. This legend may seem absurd to many, something almost unimaginable, and it certainly provokes strong reactions. However, for the residents of Shingo, this story is taken very seriously. And, Although it sounds strange, there are elements that seem to give some historical support to this narrative. Surprisingly, there is evidence that reinforces the belief of Shingo residents. This evidence is linked to a collection of ancient texts known as the Takenushi texts, which were discovered in 1936. The interesting thing is that these documents disappeared from the village around 1467 and were only rediscovered centuries later in a subway tunnel in Tokyo. This raises the suspicion that someone may have tried to hide this story, and who would be responsible for this. Some might point to the Vatican, and there is more to this story. According to these texts, Jesus would not only have returned to Japan, but would have lived his last days in Shingo. For those who visit this city, there is even a supposed tomb of Jesus, accessible to everyone. This, of course, raises questions for those who follow the traditional narrative of his death and resurrection. If this legend is true, would the whole world be celebrating the resurrection of the wrong person? What makes it even more curious is the reason given for Jesus choosing Japan as his home in recent years. The texts suggest that he was enchanted by the place, and, let's face it, Japan is known for its beauty, its impressive landscapes, the hospitality of its people, its fresh and delicious cuisine, as well as being one of the most developed countries in the world. It wouldn't be surprising if someone, after traveling there, wanted to stay. According to reports, Jesus would have completely adapted to the Japanese lifestyle. Not only did he adopt local customs, he also took on a Japanese name, Daitenku Taro Yurai. According to legend, he married a farmer's daughter and had 2 children, leading a peaceful and happy life in the city of Shingo, far from conflicts and crowds. The story further states that Jesus lived to be 106 years old. However, the veracity of this narrative is uncertain. Yes, there are documents that support this version. In 2004, the Israeli ambassador Eli Cohen visited Shingo and paid his respects at the tomb that, according to local residents, belonged to Christ. This suggests that somehow there are elements of this story that deserve attention. What is not known is which parts are true and which may have been distorted over time. In addition to Japan, Jesus would have traveled to other places. There are reports that he was also in Britain and India, and in India his journey seemed to be more focused on study and spiritual learning. But it is the story in Japan that draws the most attention, both for its peculiarity and for the associated evidence. Interestingly, this narrative also finds support in apocryphal manuscripts, such as those discovered in the Nag Hammadi library in Egypt. These manuscripts, known to contain forbidden teachings of Jesus, present alternative versions of events relating to his life and death. There are even a number of theories that talk about these forbidden teachings, which many believe have been deliberately hidden. The idea that Jesus was not crucified, that his brother took his place, and that he fled and lived in Shingo is something that appears in different records around the world. The most intriguing thing is that many of these documents, which narrate this version, were banned or mysteriously disappeared. This raises suspicions. Why try to erase a story if it was just a baseless fable? The disappearance of these documents in various parts of the world is what draws the most attention. If there wasn't something relevant about them, why would there be so much effort in hiding them? Furthermore, how many stories have been accepted over time without being questioned, especially those that serve specific interests? The influence of religious institutions on the official narrative of history cannot be ignored. In fact, when analyzing the conflicts and wars that still occur today, many of them have roots or justifications that involve religion. Could all this evidence, documents, and historical accounts be just a coincidence? Or is there something deeper to this lost story of Jesus? What can be questioned is whether this narrative, apparently forgotten, would be a real version of events. After all, looking at the body of information, it is difficult to ignore the fact that a figure as wise and strategic as Jesus could have found a way to escape his fate. Some might imagine that Jesus, with all his intelligence and knowledge, would have had the ability to elude the Roman army and avoid crucifixion. After all, history is full of figures who challenged established power and found ways to survive. What this version suggests is that perhaps he did just that, and these stories, although dark, may have a grain of truth. For those interested in exploring more about these reports, there are many details that can still be uncovered. In addition to the evidence about this narrative of Jesus, there is also the series on the manuscripts from the Nag Hammadi library, which brings teachings and stories that have been banned or forgotten over time. For those who want to know more, this series can be an excellent source of information, and if you want to continue exploring these narratives and other intriguing theories, be sure to subscribe to the channel. This way, you don't miss any of the next videos, where we delve deeper into mysteries and facts that are little talked about. Activate the bell to receive notifications and stay up to date with all new content. Share your opinions in the comments, they are always welcome. Until the next video.